Hey guys, so since I'm in FD now, I gotta work on making the car super competitive. So we know a couple things about the car. It makes good power, which is great. It's really heavy, which is not great. So one of the things that's gonna help combat that weight is getting this rear suspension dialed in over here. And it's really hard to find data on this, so I'm gonna do a couple things to check it out. And so I'm going to be measuring the dynamic camber and dynamic toe of the rear suspension. And to do that, I'm going to be using a bump steer gauge and just an angle finder to check the swing. And I'm also going to be checking the adjustment on the vertical link, because I can't seem to find anything online that talks about that vertical link. So stay tuned, and we're going to be diving in deep to this today. So the first thing I'm going to do before I even set the car in the lift or anything, I know that the suspension's settled, so I'm going to take a measurement from the center of the wheel to the center of the fender, and I mark it with a piece of tape, that way I don't mess up you know, where I'm measuring it from. So I'll go from there to there, and ride height's about 14.5 inches. So now when I put the car in the lift, I can pull the shock out and set this back up to 14.5, and I'll know where ride height is. All right, we're gonna pull this wheel off real quick. And then, now that we got the wheel off, I pull the top and bottom bolts out of the shock and get this out of the way. It's super easy to pull these out, and I can start cycling the suspension. A little dirty. Alright, so first thing we're going to check is the camber gain, because I can do that relatively easily. So I just have my jack underneath. We're going to jack it up till we get to our 14.5 inches. Which is roughly right there. So that looks really high. Maybe the car is that low, I don't know. Let's put the tire up and see. Make sure I'm not crazy. Yeah, all right, that looks right. So now I can put my little angle finder on here. All right, now she'll stay nice and flat. Okay, good. We're at perfect 90, so that makes this easy, which is what it looked like when it was on the ground too. Plus or minus 0.2 degrees, so we can check that out. So I'm gonna check the camber gain going up. So, all right, so that's a 0.5 degree camber gain. Let's see how high up we went. It was quite a bit of bump. So, come up here, measure down. That was almost perfectly an inch. So, an inch up, we're seeing a 0.5 degree of camber gain, which really isn't that bad. I'll go to 1 full degree of camber gain, which is almost at our true bump. I think we can get a little bit more than that, but nope, that's another 1/2. So at 1.5 inches, we're getting a full degree of camber gain. I'm guessing as we go up higher, it's gonna be significantly more. So we'll go up until we hit, which I think is right there. So that's 1.5 degrees of camber gain at 2.5 inches. Honestly thought it was gonna be more, but let's see how we go on droop. We're gonna come down some droop. I don't know why this thing's moving so much. So yeah, that's slightly more than 1 inch, and you've only picked up like 0.5 degree of camber. So roughly it's 0.5 degree of camber per inch from the looks of it. Drop it down some more. Now remember, this might be a little different because I am using the JTP arms, and that really didn't move at all. So I guess if I lifted the car way up, we wouldn't have much camber gain, but and the car just looks terrible. So that's 17.25. So we're looking at 2 3/4 degrees of camber, or 2 3/4 inches, and we're still at 88.4. So we've only picked up a full degree. So it seems like it's relatively flat from that angle, and then we start getting up higher to more gain as you get to ride height. Yep, so as you can see, definitely gains camber, but it's not as much as I was thinking it would be. So I really don't think that's that bad. Now I don't really know how to adjust the camber gain here, but what we can do is I'm gonna do some heights. I'm gonna write down some measurements, and then I'm gonna change the vertical link a little bit and see if that changes our adjustment at all. So I'm gonna do that, and we'll come back and talk about it. All right, so before we play with that vertical link too, I wanna do a quick test on anti-squat to see if it adjusted it as well. So I'm gonna put a line here on that brake caliper, and you can watch when I go through the range of motion that caliper is actually twisting. So because it's turning up when the car is going down, or when it squats it goes this way, that's your anti-squat there in motion. So I bet you if I adjust this vertical link, it's going to change that as well. Okay, so I did some measurements here. So the vertical link is at 8 3/4 inches end to end. So our full max droop without a shock is 19.5 inches, and that gives us 2.8 degrees of camber gain. Well, reduction because it goes positive. And then for max squat, we're gaining 2.3 degrees of camber, and that's at 11.25 inches. So that's 3.25 inches of bump travel, and we're seeing 2.3 degrees. So it's less than a degree per inch, but it's a little bit more than that, 0.5 degree. But it isn't a straight line, but from here it's looking pretty close. So then I'm also getting 1 5/16 of rotation on this caliper. So this is just something that I'm going to see. I don't really know. I could probably put it into a calculator to figure out what the actual anti-squat is, but now I'm going to adjust this vertical link and see how it changes the caliper movement, and also how it changes the camber gain, because I'm not sure if it will, but there's not a lot of info on this, so we're doing some testing. So this is nice. You can't really go, because this is the JTP kit, you're not going to be able to go on my length because the vertical link is set up slightly different. But I imagine that the change in length will be roughly the same on whatever this decides to adjust on the car. So if I can get this to break free, we will be doing pretty good, but it won't. So need more tools. There we go. Okay, so we're pretty close to being as short as possible here. So I'm gonna extend it. And you'll see the lower control arm stays, but this is gonna move the camber arm over to the back of the car. And it's gonna twist this whole spindle. So we can see here, it's not really doing too much to the camber. It is adjusting it very, very slightly. When I was talking to people, I get told to just set this so the control arm, the upper arm, is straight up and down. That's why it was as short as it was. You can see now the arm is kind of facing backwards. So I don't know how that's gonna really change much, but we're doing it for the name of science. All right, that's getting pretty tight, so we'll go there, and that's probably as maxed out as we're gonna wanna go anyway. So take a measurement on this, and I'll do the same thing. I'll cycle the suspension up and down, and we'll see how this changes. You can also see the caliper is further down on the rotor, so I'm gonna make a mark here. I'm gonna put a little like star or something next to it, and we're gonna cycle it through the motion and see how this changes the amount of motion that the spindle has, because that's indicative of our anti-squat. The vertical link doesn't really seem to be doing too much. I haven't played with anything with the toe yet, but basically I got some different numbers. Squat, I got 1.4 degrees versus 2.3 degrees, but on droop I got 3 degrees, so I got a little bit more droop camber gain, but less squat camber gain. So that might be helpful, but I'm not really sure on that. Now the ride height camber did change a little bit, and I'm guessing because this is effectively shorter now because it's not straight. And my turn on the caliper to the rotor was 1 1/4 versus 1 5/16. So now I've gone as short as possible, which is not much shorter than it was before on that vertical link, and really didn't change much. I actually think that the anti-squat isn't really changing because we're seeing about the same distance. It's like 1 1/4 rate change here, 1 1/4 inch on the caliper, and we're seeing about 1.1 inches of camber gain per 2 inches, and that's on droop and squat with it set up like this. So at least it's going to be set up consistently. So now we'll hook up the bump steer gauge, and then we can cycle the suspension, and we'll be able to find out our toe gain. And I'll play with the vertical link on that too, see if that does any changes for our bump steer. But right now I don't really think that the vertical link does too much with the camber gain or the anti-squat. I think it might change the position of where the camber gain, because like I said, it's not linear, so it might change the position of where that actually starts being more drastic or not. But didn't really look like it changed too much for me. And so from ride height, like I said, it's about 1.1 inches or 1.1 degrees, 2 inches up and 2 inches down. So I'm gonna leave it like that, and we'll get set up here. All right, I got the bump steer gauge hooked up. This is the Maxxum Motorsport bump steer gauge. I bought it years and years ago. It's super simple, pretty easy to use. The biggest thing is you gotta make sure that the car is leveled. So it's actually on jack stands right now, and I got my board leveled, everything set up, and especially with extended studs, you wanna make sure that you're not hitting the board. So that's a big thing. I can show you in there. So make sure there's a good gap in there, because it does get tight and that will screw you. So pretty much what we do is I got this set at 14.5 inches. We're zeroed out on the board, so now I can just mark you know, 1 inch of droop, 2 inches of droop, inch of squat, 2 inches of squat, and the dial indicator here will show me how much it's actually moving. So I'm more interested in squat, so let's go to 1 inch and we'll see how much she moves. Oh yeah, it's got a lot of toe in. So that's 0.130. So that's almost an 1/8 inch of toe in at 1 inch of squat. So let me get my book. I'm gonna write this down real quick, and I'm gonna run it through. So I'm gonna go all the way down till I bottom out basically, and then I'm gonna come all the way up until I'm full droop. And I'll mark it at each level, and then I'm gonna look to see if I can adjust this. I know there's ways to do it. I gotta just figure out which way I need to move the tie rod, and I'm also gonna adjust that vertical link to see if it changes this at all. All right, I went through this, and as you can see, when I let off on the jack, you get movement on the dial indicator, and it tells you your inches of travel there. So I cycled that a few times to make sure that my numbers were correct. And basically what I'm getting is 1/8 inch of toe in per inch of bump. So at least it's towing in, which is the right direction. I was under the assumption these towed out, which is completely wrong. But so they're towing in the right direction, but it is a lot of toe. So, you know, at 2 inches of bump travel, which I know I'm getting to, I'm seeing over 1/2 inch of toe in. So I think that's kind of why the car floats when I'm off throttle. Could be wrong, but I'm gonna play with that vertical link and see if it adjusts this at all. All right, so this is with the vertical link extended to 9 1/8 inches, so that's like 3/4 ish of an inch more. So we'll give this a shot and see if it changes anything. Oof, that does not look good. So I think that's about 225 per inch. Oh yeah, that is bad. That's 370, so that's like 3/8 of an inch right there at 2 already. Yeah, definitely not good. So I'm gonna do these measurements up and down, and we'll see how drastic it is. So this was pretty surprising until I thought about it. With adjusting that vertical link, it actually almost doubled our toe out because it's adjusting the bump steer. If you looked at how the tie rod or the knuckle is, the tie rod mounts on the bottom half. I'll try to get a picture of it. Over here, I'll move this all around. So because this tie rod mounts on the bottom of this knuckle. When you move this vertical link, it actually changes the height of this knuckle, or of the tie rod location, in relation to the control arms. So it actually adjusts your bump steer. And because we extended this, it raised the tie rod up, and it added more toe gain to it. So I'm actually, I wonder if I should trim this little spacer down a little bit, and I can get a little less toe gain out of it, and a little more adjustment, because I don't know when I would ever want, you know, a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch total under 1 inch of droop. That seems super excessive. Well, I gave the new lathe a shot at this, and it got pretty close. So I'm cutting about a 1/2 inch off of these. Even gave her the old reverse thread notch right here. So I think it looks pretty good. You know, it's not perfect compared to that, but it's close, you know. It's not bad. It doesn't have the nice machined recess here. But so I'm gonna throw this one in and do the same thing. I just put a couple marks, got it pretty close to a 1/4 inch, and we'll turn her down. So there you go. Not too bad. We'll have to clean these threads up a little bit, but that's fine. It's almost cleaned up, and I'll just run the rod end through here a couple times, and it should come right out. We'll do the other side, and we'll be able to slap these in and check them out. Alright, I got the new vertical link in at 8 inches. So I cut a 1/2 inch off the entire adapter, which basically bottoms out the rod ends together. And I'm really excited to see how this drives, because it makes the bump steer way more manageable. If we're looking here, hopefully you can see it. Basically, I went from, you know, an 1/8 inch to 50 thou. So we're getting just over an 1/8 inch, you know, close to 3/16 at, you know, 3 inches of travel. So we're getting under an 1/8 at 2 inches, which we're getting over a 1/4 before. So I think this is going to make the car more manageable to drive, because it's going to be less dynamic. I could be completely wrong, but now I have the amount of adjustment I need to really try it out. I could go more, but I don't know how I feel about adjusting that arm that short yet, and I'll be cutting at this point to get it any shorter. So we're going to run it like it is, and I can basically get all the way up to that 9 inches now and still be safe, and I can go, you know, to the midpoint or down to what I'm at right now, which seems like it's a good number, without having any background. So pretty excited about that with the vertical link. I also measured the camber, and it's still at around a 1/2 degree per inch. So that doesn't seem like it really changed. So hopefully I'll have a video after this, and you guys can see how that works out, and I'll make sure I mention it. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope you learned something from this, because I definitely did. And there's not a ton of information on these rear suspensions. So hopefully my time saved you some time. And that's why I do these. So thanks, guys.